Hi YouTube. So it's time for another build. So this is a tracked loader and it's inspired by the Caterpillar 973K. So moving over to the workbench, you can see that I've 3D printed almost all the parts already, and I will be using 3D printed tracks on this build, but keep in mind I will also make parts for the steel chains available for those who wants to use the chains instead. I will be using these actuators for the bucket, and I will be using this motor for the lift of the arms, and these two motors for the tracks. Now there's really not a lot of functions on this loader, so I think this will be an easy and quick build. The only thing that I'm unsure of is the pendulum for the bucket. But we'll get to that once I get it built. I might have to make some adjustments on that, but that's something that we can fix afterwards. And I've only printed one pendulum because of this, so I have to test it first and then I'll print the other one once I know everything's working. Anyway, I think that's enough yip-yapping from me, so let's just begin the build. So the first step is actually to press fit a lot of bearings in these parts. So we'll begin doing that. So you have to install 2 bearings on these parts. So you screw these parts together with these 3 screws right here. Now I actually screwed up because I ordered the wrong length of the screws. Now the screws that I'm using is 5mm shorter than the ones I actually need, so I'm gonna have to use my soldering iron and make it so that the screws that I have will work. So this is the front part of the chassis, and this is where the lifting motor for the arms is mounted into. Now keep in mind that you will need these spacers right here to keep the motor centered inside the chassis.
Times like all you want
Okay, so we're going to fill all of this with weights now, and this will be the front section of the chassis.
But if you don't wanna tell me now, I guess I'll never know. Losing almost all my energy. It's getting hard to talk to you, and I'm the only one who speaks. It's all the things you know.
Alright, so the front part of the chassis is now joined with the main chassis, and I can see already that I probably have to take this off again when I mount the arms and the lifting mechanism, and also it will be easier to paint it if I take this off. So I'll leave it in there for now. Let's continue building the rear of the chassis. So I'm just now beginning to realize just how big this thing is going to be. Inside here there's a lot of space for electronics and a lot of weights. I'm going to put weights down here and maybe down here, so also we need a lot of weight on the rear so that it doesn't flip forward. Also on the sides here you can see there's room for the track motors. Let's see. So they will be sitting here, and of course they won't be mounted to this chassis. They will be mounted to the running gear, which then has a bearing to sit. You can see they will sit like this, and this will be mounted to a pendulum up front in here. Yeah. And also I gotta mention that once the motors are in place, the wires, they will go up here and through the holes down there into the chassis. Yeah, and for those wondering what these two squares are for, they are protruding out, and they are for locking into the hood right here, so that the hood doesn't slide backwards. Yeah, like that. The next step will be to assemble the sprockets and assemble the idle wheels. Now I can already see that these holes are too small, so I'm going to drill them up, and I'll fix this when I release the files. These holes should be 4mm and they are not. Yeah, okay. So the way these sprockets are mounted up, they're a bit different than the other models. Now this sprocket actually doesn't go like this, it goes in like this.
Myself wondering what did happen to the last 10. I ran away with my life, fast forward, never turn back again. It's kind of funny that the more we pass time, the more we need to set them rewind. And 19 was the year I had to leave you, but now I'm seeing all the signs.
So that's the sprockets done. Now let's move on to the idle wheels. just use the soldering iron to melt the plastic together. There's nothing special to it, it's just, yeah, you bring the pieces together to make a full wheel. Now I could print this in a single piece, but one side would be very ugly and I don't want that. Now the reason for this groove right here and here is to keep this from getting jammed in the chassis. Let me show you. So when this is inside here, if this would be flat on the side and small sand will come in here eventually, it will lock up the wheel. But right now, because it has this groove, it will allow the sand to continue falling down. Well, anyway, that's the reason for this groove right here. So that's the idle wheels finished. Now I can paint them and then I can press fit bearings on both sides. So now we're going to assemble the arms, and there's a few things you gotta look for when you assemble them, and that is these 3 holes. Two of the arms have countersunk holes here and 2 of the arms don't. Here you can see the difference. These are countersunk and these are not. Don't worry, it will make sense soon. So you mount these 2 together, these 2 arms fit together, and the same with these. No countersunk, countersunk. So you mount them like this, and then this piece, the pendulum mount, comes in between here. That's the reason for them being countersunk on the outside, to prevent the screws from sticking out here. But before we mount the pendulum mount, we're going to assemble these arms. As you can see, the inside arms has countersunk holes right here, front and back. And on these holes we're going to use small screws. These are M3x6 countersunk self-tapping screws that we insert in these holes. Now we mount this one. Yeah, like this. There we go. And then we put in the one on the front. Then we repeat the process on the other arms. Okay, now we can move on to installing the pendulum mount. Now we're going to need M3x30. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you're going to need M3x30 self-tapping countersunk screws. Let's start with the one on the bottom. So I inserted 1 screw and then I insert this pendulum like so. Oh yeah, the way this should be mounted is very important. As you can see, this is the side it's printed on. This is the standard orientation when you print it, and this should be pointing down. You can see there's a little edge here. It should be pointing up, which means that this screw will be installed here. So let's orient the holes. There we go. Now do the other one. Another great tip is to place, once you mounted this screw, place both arms on a flat surface and then mount the other screws, because if not, you might get a little variation on where these arms are. So I recommend you put them on a flat surface and put in the remaining screws while it's sitting flat. Okay, perfect. So this is now ready for paint, and after painting I can press fit bearings on both sides of both arms. So let's assemble the bucket next. As you can see, the teeth piece has 6 holes. You just line them up with the underside of the bucket and you put in the screws, and as I like to do, I use a soldering iron to melt the plastic together on the top side here, and especially on the edges right here, because when you lift you'll get a lot of this. Yeah, so as you can see on the underside, I've had a bad print, very bad print, so I will be trying to repair this with my soldering iron as well. Oh, and I forgot to put on these. These are the footsteps to put on the sides of these arms. And we'll just put them on real quick. Okay, so I'm going to put on these other 2 footsteps off camera. And I think all the parts are now getting ready for paint. We gotta mount up the motors before paint, and I'm mounting these motors onto the parts with M4 by 10mm screws. Yeah, as I thought, all the parts are now ready to paint, and I gotta clean up these track pads because I'm painting the tracks as well. But I'll do that off camera, and yeah, I think this is it for the first episode. Okay guys, so all the parts are now going to be painted, and I'll paint them off camera and have them ready by the next episode. And in the next episode we will probably assemble the whole thing. And I was thinking I should walk you through the electronics in another separate video after that, because this needs mixing on the tracks, and I'll walk you through that. Anyway guys, that's it for this episode, and thanks for watching, and if you like this video please give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!